Welcome back to Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. This is Eric Cicada, aka Mr. Honest, your favorite Ravenclaw, broadcasting from the highest tower in Hogwarts. Today, we're officially stepping into the Goblet of Fire, covering the opening 3 chapters, the Riddle House, the Scar, and the Invitation. These chapters are short, but they're not light. They're doing positioning work. They're setting the tone for what kind of book this is going to be. And right away, Goblet of Fire tells us something important. The world is already moving, whether Harry knows it or not. So, let's start with Chapter 1, The Riddle House. This book opens in a way this series hasn't before. Not with Harry, not with Privet Drive, but with a place. The Riddle House. And we know a Riddle, Tom Riddle, from Chamber of Secrets. He was a form of a younger Lord Voldemort. So the Riddle House, a house turned into legend, a crime turned into gossip, and a man, Frank Bryce, who's been carrying the blame for 50 years. Frank is a war veteran. He's isolated. He doesn't fit neatly back into the village life, and because of that, he becomes the easy answer to something nobody understands. Before Frank, the gardener, ever steps foot back into the Riddle House that night, it's important to understand how little Hangleton, where the house is located, looks at him. To the village, Frank Bryce isn't just the old man who tends to the grounds. He's the man they decided was guilty. They spent decades telling the story the same way that Frank, the strange, quiet gardener who came back from war different, must have killed the Riddle family. Even after the police let him go, even after there was no evidence, the village never changed its mind. And something really interesting is that Tom Riddle's parents passed away and died, but so did Tom Riddle. His body was there. That's a bit of a mystery. Frank became the answer they were comfortable with. A war veteran with a bad leg, a man who lived alone, someone who didn't talk much. It was easier for them to believe he was a murderer than to admit something happened in that house that they couldn't explain. It's noted that they had terrifying looks on their faces, and there was nothing else wrong with them except for them being actually dead. So Frank lives with it. The looks, the whispers, the kids who throw stones at windows, the quiet understanding that no matter what the law says, the town has already passed judgment. That's the weight that Frank carries with him when he sees the lights on that night. He doesn't go up to the house because he's curious. He goes because he's spent a lifetime being blamed for what happens there. He thought it was kids causing a fire in the house. And in a cruel way, that makes him feel actually responsible for the things happening to the house. It's painfully human, and that's what makes this chapter unsettling before the magic even starts. When Frank goes up to the house on that fateful night, it's not heroism, it's duty. It's exhaustion. It's a man who lived long enough being blamed. And then we hear the voices. One of them is nervous, afraid, and bargaining. The other is cold, controlled, and precise. This is our reintroduction of Lord Voldemort. And it's not triumphant. He isn't powerful in the way he once was. He's surviving. He needs to be moved closer to the fire. He needs to be fed. He depends on Wormtail. We know Wormtail. Scabbers the backstabber. He trusts Wormtail to do his duty, but he's still kind of bossy and mean to him, which I kind of like. Even this detail about milking the snake, it matters. It's grotesque, yes. I didn't even know you can milk a snake. But more than that, it shows how unnatural Voldemort's existence has become. Or always was. Maybe he's just always living on that snake milk, which is just weird. And honestly, it's very Harry Potter, a very Harry Potter thing to happen at the opening of this book. He's not living, he's persisting. Wormtail, meanwhile, is terrified, not loyal, just trapped, and Lord Voldemort knows it. He sees right through him. What's chilling about this chapter isn't just the murder, it's how casually it's discussed. What's important about the conversation between Wormtail and Lord Voldemort is that it isn't vague at all. They're not reminiscing, they're not threatening in abstract terms, they are planning something very specific. Voldemort isn't talking about returning someday. He's talking about timing. He's waiting for the Quidditch World Cup to end because the wizarding world will be distracted. Ministries will be overloaded. Security will be focused outward, not inward. It's calculated, strategic, patient. They also talk about a ritual, not revenge, not an attack, but a process. Voldemort needs Harry Potter alive. And Wormtail keeps suggesting substitutes, other witches, other wizards, because Wormtail is trying to avoid the risk of Harry. And Voldemort shuts that down immediately. Harry isn't optional. That's the key detail. Whatever Voldemort is planning requires Harry specifically. His blood, his connection, his survival. This isn't about killing Harry, it's about using him. That's why Voldemort is willing to wait. That's why 13 years suddenly doesn't matter anymore. And that's why Wormtail is so afraid. Wormtail knows his plan will require him to murder again. He knows he'll have to act alone, and he knows Voldemort sees him as disposable. This isn't the return of a Dark Lord barking orders. It's the return of a strategist quietly arranging the board, and Frank Bryce overhears all of it. Bertha Jorkins is spoken about like a resource. Frank Bryce barely registers as a person at all. And when Frank is discovered listening to this conversation, there's no escape attempt, no drama, just inevitability. Frank dies. And then Harry Potter wakes up. That cut is doing a lot of work, stinging almost worse than ever. The danger didn't end at the Riddle House. It traveled. And that brings us to Chapter 2, The Scar. Chapter 2 brings us back into Harry's body. The scar hurts, and Harry knows immediately that it means something. Not panic, recognition. The important shift here is that the scar isn't just symbolic anymore. It's responsive. It reacts to Voldemort's presence even from far away. 200 miles away to be exact. Harry thinks through who he could tell, and Hermione, Ron, and Dumbledore come to mind. And for the first time, none of them quite fit what he needs. What he actually wants is simple and heavy at the same time. Someone like a parent. That line matters. It shows how Harry has changed so much. And that's where Sirius comes in. Not safe, not settled, but emotionally aligned with Harry in a way no one else is. This chapter is also quietly reminding us that Harry is loved now. Letters, gifts, food hidden under the loose floorboard. He's still physically isolated, but emotionally he's not alone anymore. That matters before the story widens again. And I always find myself just wishing and wanting and hoping to see the Dursleys just give Harry a little bit of love, a tiny inch, just something that makes them appreciate him. But there's never that. It's cold, callous, and just completely rude to this young man. Harry is not really taken care of. Well, he is. He's taken care of by the minimum of the Dursleys. And that's like the least they can do, and anything else that bothers their world, if he's just standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, nothing's changed. They don't respect him. They don't like the wizard stuff. They want him to keep that away, and he does for the most part. He hides the wizard stuff under the cupboard where he used to sleep. I think that's where they tell him to put it. But he has that loose floorboard that he keeps little goodies in because Dudley has been on a diet. He is literally being told by the school that he goes to that he's eating too much and he's too fat. As a bigger guy, I even sympathize with Dudley on this one. So chapter 2 really is kind of a catch-up. It tells us a lot about what Harry's been through in the past books for newer readers, or for someone even just for some reason picking this up as the first Harry Potter book that they read, which is interesting and very possible. Which brings us to chapter 3, the invitation. Yes, these beginning chapters are shorter, and that's just to establish the plot and get the plot moving, and it honestly makes it feel a bit faster in that sense. So the invitation shifts tone intentionally. Dudley's diet is affecting the whole household. The grapefruit, the forced health, it's actually just so funny, but it's also so unraveling. The whole household is affected by Dudley being big. Harry, for the first time, has leverage also. Not magic, not rebellion, but information. The Weasley letter. I love this. It even has a picture of it in my book at the beginning of the chapter. It's covered in stamps. It's just one of those perfect Rowling moments. Wizard kindness colliding with the Muggle world in the most obvious way possible. It's funny and it's loving. And then there's Sirius. Harry never threatens Uncle Vernon outright. He doesn't need to. he just lets the idea exist, telling Uncle Vernon he's going to go finish his letter to Sirius. And Uncle Vernon caves pretty fast. He's terrified of even the idea of a magical serial killer coming to take their lives. That really does help Harry put them in check, even though it's a little bit grotesque. They treat him horribly, so I don't blame him for using it. So Uncle Vernon caves, and by the end of this chapter, Harry has an invitation to the Quidditch World Cup, a safe place waiting for him, friends actively coming to get him, rock-hard pastries or whatever it is Hagrid makes for Harry, and Harry doesn't eat, but loves and appreciates the love. He feels calm, secure, and ready. Not even thinking so much about Voldemort anymore. He's just ready to leave. And that makes that final line land the way it does. So, why this opening matters. Let's talk about this a little bit. Taken together, these 3 chapters are doing something very deliberate. Chapter 1, it tells us the threat is real and active. Chapter 2 shows us how Harry feels internally. And Chapter 3 reminds us of what Harry has to lose. Goblet of Fire is a transition book. It's the bridge between the childhood trilogy and what comes next in the trilogy of Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and finally the Deathly Hallows. Hallows. And that's why Rowling emphasizes safety and love before escalation. That's why Harry feels more supported here than in any previous opening. And that's why Voldemort is introduced not as a myth, but as a planner. This book isn't rushing towards chaos. It's positioning the pieces carefully. Because once the game starts, there's no stopping it. That's going to do it for today's episode of Magic Muggle. Like I said, some shorter chapters, but a lot to carry in them. Shorter little opening episode for us to get back in, dip our feet in the pool of Harry Potter. I'm very excited to be on this book. There's a lot that happens in it, and it's the thickest book by far. You almost can probably fit the first 3 books in the length of this book, which is insane. If you're enjoying the show, the best way to support it is simple. Subscribe wherever you're listening, share the episode with a fellow Potter fan, and rank the show. If you'd like to ranking is really important. If you could rank the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever and give it 5 stars or whatever the maximum thing is, it goes such a long way, and I will feature reviews on the podcast. And if you'd like to go a step further, there is a tip jar linked in the show notes. Never required, always appreciated. We're also actively figuring out what Patreon looks like for Magic Muggle moving forward. Whether that lives on its own or alongside our other show, Marvel Maniac and MCU After Show, there's more. We'll have more on that soon. Thank you for being here at the very start of Goblet of Fire with me. Harry is going to be going through some crazy stuff this year at Hogwarts, and we still have a lot to go to. We're going to be going to the Quidditch World Cup. We have the excitement of the start of term, and then we get the twist of the goblet. All coming up on Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. And until next time, wands down, hearts full.